I'm 40, but I feel like a child watching everyone around me get older and die. So I'm homesick for the past instead of accepting the terrifying present. How can I stop mourning the past? Now you're suffering from what Freud described as reminiscences of the past. You're possessed by reminiscences. They won't get out of your mind. And what that means to me is, well, it's one of two things. One is that there's things in your past that you need to understand more deeply. And that's why they're still calling to you. And there are things in your past that you had, perhaps, that you need to have in the present and the future. And so you could do the past authoring program and write out your past. It asks you to detail the most emotionally significant events that occurred during different epochs or stages of your life. So you have to break your life into a number of stages. I think we recommended 6, but you can break it into as many as you want or as few. And then to detail out the significant positive and negative occurrences, that stand out in your memory from those times. And that'll kind of help put the past to rest, but it also might highlight for you what it is that you're nostalgic for. And then that can help you figure out what to aim for in the future. And so, it sounds like you're rather hopeless about the present and by implication the future. And maybe that's because you don't have a richly enough developed conception of what it could be. So you could go back to your past and find out what it is that you wanted and had, and then you need to make a plan for how you might obtain that in the future. Now, it's a bit more complicated than that because you talked about death, and so you may be longing in some sense for a return to in a state of blissful ignorance where you weren't concerned about mortality. And, the only real medication for that, I think that's real, is to live as worthwhile a life as you can, as full a life, so you don't have regrets. I'm not sure that so much that people are afraid of death. They're maybe afraid of not living enough. And maybe if you lived enough, you could let it go when it was time. I think there's some truth in that. And so if you're overly afraid of death, it may be because you have a lot of unlived life in you. And you could go back to the past and you can find out what you needed and perhaps had then, and then you can strive to attain that in the present and the future. And those exercises could, at least in principle, help you with that. So what are you missing, right? What are you missing that the past had for you? And maybe you write that down. Like, well, I had this, and it was really important to me. And I had a loving relationship with someone, and I don't have that now. I had the security of a comfortable home life, and I don't have that now. It's, well, those are things that now become ambitions, right? Because an ambition and a lack are mirror images of one another. And so if you can identify what you lack, you can derive an ambition from that. And you might say, well, that's impossible. It's like, well, you decompose it into small steps. And that's complicated, but so life is complicated. So there's no way around that.
You're somewhere, because you have to be somewhere. Now, you might not know where that is, which means that the somewhere that you are is chaotic, in which case you need to go over your past in great detail and figure out where you are. It's like you're lost, right? You're lost, and the problem with being lost is when you're lost, you don't know where to go, and the problem with not knowing where to go is there's a million places that you could go, and a million places is too many places for you to go without dying. So being lost is not good. So you need to know where you are. One of the things that we built online, my partners and I, is this program called Past Authoring that helps people lay out the narrative of their past, to identify, to break their life down into 6 stages, epochs we call them, and then to identify the emotionally significant moments in each epoch and to write them out. What happened negatively, what happened positively, what the consequences were, what you derived from it, perhaps what you could have done differently, perhaps what you learned from it, all of that, so that you can zero in on determining precisely where it is that you are right now. And people are often loath to do that because they actually don't want to know, because they'd rather be spread out in a sort of half-blind manner in the fog, hoping that the place that they're at is better than it really is, and deluding themselves by remaining vague than to figure out, I'm right here, right now with these specific problems. But it's actually better to do that, because if you have a set of specific problems and you've really narrowed them down and really specified them, then you can probably start fixing them. And you can start fixing them in micro ways, bit by bit. But there's no way you can do that without knowing where you are. It's impossible. And you can kind of tell if you don't know where you are. It's quite straightforward. If you are haunted by reveries of the past, for events that are older than approximately 18 months, if they continue to come up in your mind over and over, in your dreams over and over, you haven't extracted the world out from your past experiences. The potential is still trapped in the past. And to confront the potential means to confront the dragon of the past. And of course, that's terrifying, and it can seriously be terrifying. So for example, maybe you're vague and ill-formed and ill-defined because you were abused very badly when you were a child, 4 years old, something like that. And maybe you were abused by a family member, because that's generally who does the abusing. And so that just makes it worse. And then what that means is that you've had an implicit encounter with malevolent evil. You've had a direct encounter with malevolent evil, but you have an implicit hypothesis of malevolent evil that's plaguing you. It's still there. It's trapped in the memories, right? It's trapped in the representational structure. And as an adult, you're now faced with the necessity of articulating that fully before you have any chance whatsoever of freeing yourself from it. And so that's no joke. Lots of times people have to go into the past. That's what the psychoanalysts do. And say, look, here is something came along and just bloody well knocked me over. And it isn't even that I repressed it, which I think was, well, we won't talk about Freud's errors because Freud was a genius, so we'll just leave him alone. But sometimes it's not repression, it's just that terrible things happen to people at such a young age that there isn't a bloody chance in hell that they can figure out why they happened or what to do with them or what they mean. And then you can carry that with you, and you carry it with you. It's like your body encounters the world in stages, and it happens very rapidly. Well, it can extend over years, but the initial stages happen very rapidly. So, for example, if you're walking down the road and you hear a loud noise behind you, you'll go like this. That's a predator defense response, by the way. You crouch down, and that's to stop something from jumping on your back and getting at your neck too easily. That's like a few hundred milliseconds. It's really or even faster than that. And it better be, because something like a snake, we'll say, can nail you just right now, so you better be fast. But it's low resolution. It's like danger snake, something like that, or danger predatory cat. It's that fast. And then you can unravel that and categorize it, but that takes time. You do that with emotion, and then you do it with cognition, and you can do that with long-term thinking, because maybe you've encountered someone specifically malevolent and predatory at work. That happens to people a lot, who's operating as a destructive bully and who seems to have no positive function whatsoever and is only living that out. And then you don't know what to do about it. So you're in prey mode. I don't mean this kind of mode, although that would help too. But I mean, you're acting like a prey animal, and then you have this terribly complex thing to decompose, which is, what the hell's up with this person? Why are they making my life miserable? What is it about me that allows them to make my life miserable? That's a nasty little road to walk down. And you're stuck with having to decompose it. Maybe you can't. Maybe formulating an explicit philosophy of good and evil to deal with something malevolent in your environment actually just happens to be beyond you. And that could easily be. It's certainly the case for people who are young. And it's the case for plenty of adults as well. It's no simple thing to manage. It's something, too, that often soldiers who have post-traumatic stress disorder have to do because they've encountered terrible things. They've either done them or ran into them, and they need to update their moral model of the world, or they end up in something closely approximating hell. You need to know where you are. That's this, what is. Where are you? So you're navigating. You're a navigator. You're a sailor on an ocean, man. That's what you are. You're a mobile creature. You're going from point A to point B all the time. You're not sitting there glued to a rock like some brainless, sea creature. There's a funny little creature called a hydra. Very simple little creature. In its juvenile stage, it has a brain because it swims around. But then when it... turns into an adult, it latches itself to a rock and promptly digests its brain. Because if you're just sitting on a rock and you're not moving, you don't need a brain. But that's not our issue, right? We're zipping around in the world, and so we're navigating agents. And so to navigate, there's two things you need to know. And the first is, where the hell are you? Exactly, precisely, right? Razor sharp. What's good about you and what's bad about you? By your own reckoning. You don't have to... You can ask other people, but this is a game you play yourself. It's like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm taking stock. What is it that's okay about me and what needs some work? And you got to watch to not be too self-critical when you're doing that too, because that can just be another kind of flaw.